Hello, my name is Dr. Rath. 30 years ago, I worked with a two-time Nobel Prize winner, Linus Pauling. Dr. Pauling was one of the most influential scientists of the 20th century. His discoveries included the fundamentals of immunology, the basic structure of proteins, and the first known genetic disease, sickle cell anemia. In his later years, Dr. Pauling studied the role of micronutrients in combating viral diseases, including influenza and the immunodeficiency virus, HIV. Shortly before his death, Linus Pauling asked me to continue his pioneering work in vitamin research and, if necessary, to defend it against all attacks. And there have been numerous attacks against the ever-increasing importance of micronutrients in all areas of medicine. The main reason for this resistance was that these natural substances cannot be patented and are therefore undesirable or even a threat for an investment industry whose multi-billion-dollar business model is based on the sale of patented synthetic drugs, the pharmaceutical industry. The unscrupulous business model and the oppressive history of this investment industry are described in a separate video. After Linus Pauling's death, I founded my own research institute together with my colleague Dr. Alexandra Nitzwicki, which has been one of the leading institutes of scientifically based natural health research for more than 2 decades. Our research expanded the knowledge about the crucial role of micronutrients against various diseases, including the defense against viral infections. With the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic last year, I addressed an open letter to the people and the governments of the world about the importance of micronutrients in the fight against viral diseases. My letter also contained the warning that this pandemic would be abused by the pharmaceutical industry and its lobbyists in medicine, media, and politics to reinforce the pharmaceutical industry's credibility lost among the people. My open letter of March 2020 was read thousands of times worldwide and contributed to the growing resistance against these restrictions imposed by governments in many countries. We as scientists felt that we had to prove to the people of the world that micronutrients strengthen not only the immune system, but are also effective against the very coronavirus that caused the COVID-19 pandemic. After almost a year of intensive research, it is now scientifically proven that specific micronutrient combinations can inhibit all key mechanisms of coronavirus infections. These include, first, the inhibition of the production of the cellular entry ports essential for coronavirus infections, the so-called ACE2 receptors. Second, the inhibition of the binding of the virus to these cellular surface receptors. Third, the inhibition of the virus infiltration, the entry into the cell, which is the beginning of the infection. And finally, the inhibition of the enzymes, the biocatalysts inside the cell that are responsible for the replication, the multiplication of the virus. We'll present the details of these research findings in a separate video. The importance of these research findings towards the ultimate control of the coronavirus pandemic is so evident that a 14-year-old student can easily understand them. In principle, each vaccine targets only one single virus subtype, virus variant. Each mutation potentially requires the development of a separate new vaccine with months of testing for efficacy and safety. The coronavirus is an exceptionally rapidly mutating virus, and the number of mutations will multiply in the future. The picture on the left shows the problem of a pandemic strategy based solely on vaccines. The vaccines currently being administered worldwide were all developed against the coronavirus variant that originated in China. Their effectiveness against the newly emerging mutations from the UK, Brazil, South Africa and other regions of the world is entirely uncertain, and for some vaccines even scientifically refuted. Therefore, a strategy to combat the coronavirus pandemic based solely on vaccines is understandably for everyone doomed to fail. Our scientific approach shows the possibly only way out of the dilemma of trying to contain a pandemic with numerous virus mutations. Our research does not focus on blocking a single coronavirus variant or mutation, but a strategy that arms the human cells against the attacks of all coronavirus variants and mutations. All coronavirus variants and mutations use the same entry ports to infect human cells, the receptors on the cell surface mentioned before. If we can inhibit the production of these entry ports on the cell surface, it becomes more difficult or even impossible for all coronavirus mutations to enter the cell to infect it. We have managed to demonstrate precisely this, as you can see on the right-hand side. The importance of these research results cannot be overestimated, especially in view of the threat posed by ever-new coronavirus mutations. With these new findings, humanity has, for the first time, a scientifically based alternative to vaccines, which are associated with entirely unknown risks. As a result of these findings, which are vital for millions of people, I did not hesitate for one moment to inform the leaders of many countries by email and by letter. None of these political leaders should be able to say in the future, "I didn't know." We all know that politicians often will only consider new decisions if they feel that their people, ultimately their voters, are supporting them. This, of course, applies in particular to political decision takers in the world's leading pharmaceutical export nations, such as Germany, France, and certain other European countries, and of course the US. In these countries, politicians generally only come to power when they represent these business groups' interests. In these countries, it comes down to making the needs of the people and the voice of reason, your voice of reason, so comprehensively clear that they outweigh the billion-dollar pharmaceutical business interests, the financial interests of the business with disease. Therefore, this website aims to inform you, the people of the world, no matter where you live, that I have officially told your political leaders about this extension, or should I say alternative, to the questionable vaccination campaigns. Whether they will be implemented in your country now depends essentially on you. I have been fighting the unscrupulous business interests of the pharmaceutical industry for over 30 years. What humanity is witnessing these days is an attempt by the multi-billion-dollar investment industry to ensure the continuation of its unscrupulous business model in the shadow of the coronavirus pandemic. Given the explosion of knowledge about the importance of vitamins and the foreseeable superiority of science-based natural substances in the entire field of medicine, the pharmaceutical business model will soon be considered obsolete. It is foreseeable that the continued existence of this billion-dollar business can then only be enforced against the interests of broad parts of the population. The most effective tool humanity has to eliminate this threat is to become as familiar as possible with the knowledge of the importance of natural substances, vitamins, micronutrients for human health. Help ensure that this knowledge is used far beyond the coronavirus pandemic to build a preventive healthcare system. I invite you, no, I call upon you, take advantage of the groundbreaking findings of micronutrient research and the arguments presented on this website. Join us in helping to end the current coronavirus pandemic for good through the widespread use of micronutrients. Help prevent future pandemics effectively and safely, and work towards building a prevention-oriented healthcare in your country. Do it for yourself. Do it for your children and grandchildren. and for all future generations.